Today we are talking about the Bantamweight champion. We are talking about Merab Dvalishvili. Now understand, you guys have probably seen so many videos talking about his wrestling and how he is constantly putting on a pace, but I want to talk about what specifically does he do, because I feel like in his last fight he proved so many people wrong. Because in his last fight against Umar Nurmagomedov, on paper he should have not been the better striker or the better wrestler to Umar. Umar was supposed to have him beat in technically all points of MMA. However, Merab was still able to outstrike him, out-wrestle him, and obviously win the fight and hold his 135 belt. It's such a weird thing to say, but Merab may not be the most skilled fighter, but his skills and the things that he has used, like his cardio, like his pace, is something that is second to none. His skills really don't need to be anything crazy. Now, that's not to say that Merab has not improved. He is one of the more talented 135ers we have ever seen. However, against guys like Umar, he relatively should not be competing in the wrestling ability. We have seen Merab have difficulties actually taking people down and taking them to wrestling exchanges. He does a really good job of pressing people against the octagon and constantly shooting takedowns. But that's the thing a lot of people need to realize, is that Merab is not looking for a finish, and if he is looking for a finish, it's because you gave it to him. What Merab is looking to do is drown you. What Merab is looking to do is take you into deep waters and have you so flustered at everything Merab throws. He has a high volume on the feet. When he's clinching up against you, he has a high volume when he's shooting takedowns. Now, Merab, what he does beautifully is moving levels. When he is going through his single leg or double leg or any sort of takedown, matter of fact, he does a very phenomenal job of moving back up and going back into striking distance and clinch range. Against Umar, it was fantastic because towards the end of the rounds, Umar started to let these Merab takedowns actually work because of the fear of getting hit by something else, being the fear of the striking of Merab having a successful land compared to the takedowns. But what ended up happening was, towards the end of the round, we saw the famous single leg of Merab where he then pointed at Umar, which obviously to the judge's eyes looks way better than whatever Umar was throwing at Merab. And that's the thing with Merab that is so special, is that he's not really making the judges have to really pick someone. He's making these judges make this fight look easy. He's making the fight look so simple to these judges' eyes because it is Merab constantly putting offense. It is Merab constantly pressing you against the cage, constantly having you move backwards, defending takedowns. When the fight is over, you realize you barely threw anything at him. All you did was defend. And yes, Merab may have not been successful in his 50 takedowns. However, the judges saw all 50 takedowns and saw all forward movement from Merab, then giving him the fight. A lot of people are mad that Merab won the fight against Aldo, or Merab has won fights against certain people that he shouldn't have won because technically they were defending takedowns. However, the devil's advocate to that is, what was the other opponent doing? Jose Aldo, for example, really wasn't doing much against the cage other than defending takedowns. Umar, for example, was constantly moving backwards in those first couple rounds and was looking good in the early rounds, but eventually got tired and then was resorting back to constantly defending takedowns, constantly defending striking. And that's exactly what Merab does. He just has you constantly at a defense where you are constantly going to have to respect them, constantly going to have to respect all these takedowns, constantly. I'm constantly saying the word constantly because this guy keeps goddamn moving. He keeps moving, and the pace that Merab puts on people can go for 30 minutes, can go for an hour. If the fight was first person to quit, I think Merab would constantly be winning because the guy does not get tired. In his recent fights, we have seen that his striking has evolved in spectacular ways. He is finally developing kicks. They may not be well executed kicks. It's not good opening. It's not accurate land. However, it is a kick that is going to have to constantly get blocked. It's a kick that has to constantly either be evaded, having to collide with Merab, which is exactly playing into Merab's game. He wants a brawl out of you. He wants you to throw everything at him because Merab is such a tough SOB that he's constantly going to be there. He's going to still be there, and you better hope you are throwing and constantly brawling with him and putting him out, because it's going to be a tough fight if this fight goes the full distance. I'm not going to sit here and say Merab is the perfect fighter. He definitely has some flaws. Kind of pointed out three, and I think the first one has to be his finishing ability. Although yes, Merab keeps winning these fights, it's not the funnest way possible, and Dana White is a guy that wants to see fun fights. So if you are constantly taking people to these decisions and constantly take these people to Merab fights, these Merab fights are very entertaining for these hardcore fans like me, like you probably watching this video. But if you're talking about Jimmy, who is 14, wanting to watch some UFC, He wants to see Francis Ngannou throw an uppercut at Alistair Overeem. He doesn't want to see what Merab is doing, which is, although a very great game and technical game, it's just not appealing to the eyes. Another flaw is his striking defense, because I do think when people are throwing offense at him, he is very susceptible to a lot of the strikes that are thrown at him because of how offensive Merab is. Merab is constantly moving forward, that he will happily want to collide with you. He will want these large wrestling scrambles or striking scrambles that end up with overhands being thrown. And it's just a war that Merab wants. But we have seen moments in striking where he does get caught. Against Marlon Moraes, he got caught with a beautiful overhand and almost got finished there. Against Sean O'Malley in the 5th round, the teep kick landed towards the end. Sean O'Malley maybe had 1 minute left to that fight. We could have been talking different, because it looked like Merab was really hurt in that body shot. My final flaw of Merab is not really something to be crazy about, but I do think his submission game is very questionable. I think his jiu-jitsu can sometimes a little out there at times. His neck can be left open, and there's a lot of moments when he's shooting these takedowns where a very talented BJJ artist could definitely snatch and get a submission on Merab due to how reckless and careless he can be sometimes in the clinch. Now, Merab's flaws are something that I really don't think can really be changed. Obviously, the striking defense, the finishing power could maybe, but I think Merab's game has such a nuanced understanding that it's really difficult to work on the submission game or the finishing power or the striking defense, because Merab's game is all revolving around chaos. His unorthodox movement of constantly moving back and forth, whether he is throwing an overhand or throwing an overhand into a single leg or throwing a jab into an overhand, it's the same entries constantly, and it's all towards the same goal. It is Merab trying to get you on the back foot and constantly having you defend. With a high level striking defense or a high level striking IQ, Merab might not be able to still be moving forward and wanting to put the same pressure that Merab would put. I know this sounds silly to say, but I really think Merab being Merab is the reason why he's so good. I think that's why people are finding Merab so entertaining, is because when you see him online climbing random hills, attacking a horse, he's getting trampled by a horse, it's just Merab being Merab. And I think if you try to fix those flaws, you're talking about a different person, and that's just not who Merab is. Merab is a chaotic motherfucker. Him as a human is a chaotic dude. So when you try to get those flaws out the way, it just doesn't really correlate to who he is as a person. And honestly, why should Merab change? Because if we're talking about his resume, this guy is honestly in the discussions for Bantamweight GOAT. I never want to give him that, because you can always use the power of recency bias. You look at Merab's talent right now and compare him to the other Bantamweight GOATs like Dominic Cruz or TJ Dillashaw. Yes, Merab's opponents are on a different level to what Dominic Cruz and TJ Dillashaw was fighting. However, what do you want Dominic Cruz to do? He can't spawn in a Petr Yan, a Corey Sandhagen, the talented 135 division that it is right now. Dominic Cruz was dealing with people at his time and his abilities. Guys like Brian Bowles or guys like Joseph Benavidez at the 135 division, Uriah Faber. Dominic Cruz was the dominator. However, Merab the Machine Dvalishvili is turning into somewhat undeniable case here. It is very easy to say he is when you look at his last 5 fights. We have Jose Aldo, Petr Yan, Henry Cejudo, Sean O'Malley, and Umar Nurmagomedov. I mean, it is a list that you are arguing one of the best 5 fights that we have ever seen. There might be Ilya in the next couple years. If he wins his next 3 or whatever the 3 might be, then you'll have like Volk, Max, and then, wherever Ilya wants to go. But if you look at who Merab beat, we have a featherweight GOAT in Jose Aldo. You can argue with a wall. I think he is the best 145er we have ever seen. You have Triple C, a guy who has won 2 divisions and an Olympic gold medal. And never forget about that gold medal. You have Sean O'Malley, a 135 champ. You also have Umar Nurmagomedov, who is a uber talented person who, when Merab is gone, will probably be reigning this division as dominant as what Merab is doing. You are missing Petr Yan. You are missing a guy that, if Umar and Merab don't exist, this is one of the better 135ers in this division who has shown that he can dominate. He can show that in a 5-round fight, Petr Yan is a nightmare to deal with. And what did Merab do? Look dominant in all 5 of these fights. You cannot sit there and tell me that Merab has lost these fights. There is no Merab loss. There is no Merab looking weak. There is Merab looking dominant, or Merab just getting stagnant against guys like Jose Aldo, where Jose Aldo, all he could do was defend and not really throw any offense at Merab, because all Merab was doing was offense. It's a discussion to have because Merab has built a resume that is second to none. But in my personal opinion, I still think Dominick Cruz is still there because of the pure power of hindsight and recency bias. Obviously, these 5 fights and these 5 fighters look amazing, but when you go up and try to scale it back to what Dominick Cruz had at the time, I understand names like Brian Bowles or Uriah Faber, Joseph Benavidez aren't names that sound spectacular compared to Jose Aldo, Petr Yan, Henry Cejudo, Sean O'Malley, Umar. However, Dominick Cruz has beaten guys who at the time were kind of regarded in this sort of top 5 sense, and he looked dominant while doing so. And so, I mean, you can have an argument, and I wouldn't fault you if you sat there and told me Merab is the 135 GOAT. But in my personal opinion, I still think Dominick Cruz is still there. That is all I have for you guys. Let me know in the comments how you feel about Merab Dvalishvili. Let me know if you think he's a 135 GOAT. Let me know if you want to see more videos, and let me know if you hate me. I don't know. It's been Santi. It's been Studs.